Hey guys, it's Emily Lopez. Welcome back to You Can DIY. If you've been following along, you know that we are working on, well, this whole house, but lately I've been working on this laundry room, entryway, mudroom area of this property. So we have the cabinets done over there. We've got our nice butcher block countertop on. This is where our laundry is gonna go. And now I have this empty space behind the door. And we don't have a lot of square footage in this property, so I'm really trying to make every space count and intentional for storage and also for design. So today what I'm gonna do is I am gonna build a little bench right here because you really have no way once you come in, you can go down the stairs, you have the banister here, you can go through this little passway into the actual kitchen. There's nowhere that you could really put a chair or a couch or a bench to take off your shoes. So I found this cool little section and it's like really the perfect size. My Home Depot sells these pre-made, they're shelves, but they're butcher block shelves. And we've already done butcher block on the counter on our cabinets, so this really goes perfect with that. So I bet every home improvement store has these, or you could just get a strip of wood, but I thought this would make it easy. So this is 6 feet long, and I think I'm gonna make my bench about 30 inches long. So I'm gonna just be able to cut this down. And we're gonna do a bench. We have enough of that we can do the two sides for support. Then underneath there's gonna be storage if you wanna take off your shoes and tuck them under. I've seen people put baskets for hats, mittens. This is Wyoming, so it gets cold in the winter. We're gonna do a cool design element above it. And so let's get to it. Before I start cutting into my material, I'm just gonna really make sure that I'm happy with the dimensions that I'm going with. So the section of butcher block I got, it's 12 inches. So I'm gonna leave that depth, that's perfect. I feel like that's enough to have a nice seat, but then it doesn't stick out too far. The door can still open more than 90 degrees. The other thing is I am gonna go 30 inches. So that takes me about to right here, guys. So I'm gonna have like maybe 1.75 to 2 inches over here. I know this wall is not perfectly straight. So I have on over here where my cabinet is, I have about 1.5 inches with my counter and maybe about 2 inches from my cabinet of a gap. So my reveal will kind of match my reveal over there. So I'm just gonna go cut down my length piece to 30 inches and then I'll confirm my height and cut my two side pieces. So let's go get that cut. Now we're just gonna get this open so we can take our measurement and get a top of our bench cut down to size. Now, if you're not gonna use your full piece, take your time to look at it or see what sections you want there. A lot of times there's maybe a grain you like better or a piece that looks prettier that you want to be on the front and you have a less pretty piece that will go on the side. So take a look at it and pick what part you want to go where if you have a preference. So I'm going to take my measurement, 30 inches. I just noticed this is hanging off over here. It's going to drop. So I'm just going to put that there so it has something to catch it. There's the top of our bench, folks. We're gonna be able to use this because the way I'm gonna do it is have my bench across the side and have two support pieces, almost like legs, but I'm still gonna mount it to the wall too. So we'll take our measurements and these will be our base legs. So I just brought this over here. I'm super visual. I can make a plan, but I gotta see it in place. So I've done two marks. I've done 18 inches and 20 inches because a bench standard is about those heights. I think I wanted to do a little bit taller because I think it's easier to get back up off of something if you sit on something a little bit higher than something lower. So if this was the top of this was at 20 inches, we'd be about right there. And I like the look of that for my space. So now we need to see if this is our top, and I think this tells me it is 1.5 inches thick. Which, yeah, more or less it is. So if I want the top of this to be at 20 inches, let's double check. Then my legs need to be 20 inches minus 1.5 inches. So that's 18.5 inches tall is how tall I want each of my side pieces to be. So I'm gonna go cut those down to 18.5 inches tall. So I'm just measuring from both sides to make sure I actually have enough. Okay, I have plenty. I just wanted to make sure that if I went 18.5, I had 18.5 on the other side to make the next one that tall. So I do. I'm gonna have a little strip left over. Then, for me, because it's more important that these are exact, I'm just gonna use this guy to draw my length for the next one. Now keep in mind when you trace something, this line is gonna always be a little bit further out So you almost want to trim off part of your line if you did a trace for a measurement. Okay, so I have it lined up where I'm going to trim off just part of my pencil line. Okay, so now we have this little scrap. Give me your ideas on what I should do with this. I always save this stuff because I know that you can make like a Christmas tree or something. Like a little miniature decoration one. What should I make with it? Tell me. Okay, so I have my 2 pieces. I like to just stack them. Sorry, I'm yelling. I like to just stack them and make sure that they're the same and that they're nice and lined up. If not, then I trim, one down a little bit, but I'm happy with those. So let's go lay it all out. I'll probably end up making some trims into my trim to get this nice and flush everywhere, but we're just gonna kind of lay this out, make sure we liken the vibe of everything. So that will be flush because we'll trim into the trim. So we can just kind of get an idea, but I think that works for the space. I think obviously I don't want to sit on it. I think the height's good. I think for a bench it could be lower, but it's hard if you sit down on, it's like the chair height toilets. They're easier for people to get off of. So I'm good with this. I think that we're good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the top to the legs with pocket holes and glue. And then I'm going to, once I bring it in and I know exactly how it aligns, I'll trim out my sections of trim so I can slide this back flush. And then we'll bolt it into the wall a little bit as well. Now I have, this is the top of my bench face down. I'm kind of going to lay it out the way I'm going to assemble it. And I am just going to loosely sand. I'm going to do a nice sand coat before I paint my poly on, but I'm just getting these edges because once I put this all together, it's going to be a little bit harder to get into these corners. So I'm going to do the flat surfaces later, but just where I made my cuts and I kind of have some imperfections and some roughness, I'm going to go ahead and do this before I start assembling everything. To assemble this, I have to think, if we're looking at this upside down, this is the front. This is what's going up against my wall right here, and then this is my other. If I do pocket holes, this is going to go up against the wall. So on this one, I'm going to do the pocket holes on the outside because you won't see them when it goes up against the wall. For this leg, I have, when you look at it from the side, this is what you see. And so for this leg, I'm going to do it on the inside, and you'll see it if you tucked your head under, but you want a nice flush side piece from, I'm in the room that I'll be able to see it in there. So we're going to do one on the inside, one on the outside. So that one is going to go there, but that one we're going to do them on the same side because it's going to go up against the wall. So then that one's going to go there, up against the wall. All right, same thing over here. Well, this is definitely a nice hardy bench. And we knew we were going to have to trim some of our trim out. So here, it's against this wall. And then here, we're going to trim a little section out here to slide this into place. And then we can caulk. We've trimmed out where this leg's gonna go and where this leg's gonna go, and now let's see if it is aligned and it's the right spot before we try to pretty those back up. That'll do. Nice, guys. Pretty exciting. I've sort of figured out my spacing. Basically, I have cut each of my slats, and that would just be based on how many you want. I'm gonna go part of the way. It's just like a little accent strip, not the whole way. So we're gonna go to about here with slats, and I wanna have black paint behind that just to make it pop, and then to blend in, we have a black kind of stylish light and a matte black hand railing. We're gonna do the same color behind the slats to bring the black to this side of the room because we don't have any of that over here. I kind of know where my last one is gonna end, so I want my paint to end somewhere behind that so it doesn't go over. So it doesn't have to be perfect. These are, like 2 inches wide, so it's gotta be somewhere behind the last one that it stops. So I'm just gonna kind of give myself a line. I'm gonna use a level. So if we did that, our black paint would go just over far enough, but not too far, which is what we want. Because we have the margin of error of the width of that board, you definitely do not have to tape this, but I'm going to, just because I'm a little bit messy. And then I'm gonna tape also up along the ceiling, because I definitely don't want any black paint on the ceiling, and then over on this wall. But I don't have to paint all the way to the wall because I'm gonna have a slat there too. Then we definitely want to protect our bench, and I actually did not attach this yet, just to be safe. So I'm just gonna I'm just gonna slide this bench out for now. While our first coat of black paint is drying over there on our little accent section, these I have cut the slats. These we're just gonna do 5 of them, so just like a little strip of accent on that wall. So I'm gonna go ahead and prep these. I'm gonna sand them down with a 220 grit sandpaper just to clean them up, and then I'm going to put a coat of poly on them before we go back and do the second coat of black on the wall in there.
I attached my slats to the wall with a brad nailer, and I used a wood block at the top and the bottom to make sure I had even spacing between every one of my slats.
Pretty much have all the pretty stuff up, and my final step is gonna be to put this board across, and then I'm gonna put my hooks on that. I like to do this because I know if you get a hook, let me show you. If you don't go into a stud, you can't just expect the drywall to hold anything up, so you're gonna use an anchor, and that goes behind the wall, and then the screw goes into the wall and it holds on to that and it holds. But you're limited to the strength of the drywall because that's what's holding all the weight. So you never know if someone's gonna put like a really heavy backpack or something like that. If I mount this, I know it's not quite as stylish and cool, but if I mount this on 2 studs and then I put those in, I have more security and I feel a lot better about it not knowing what potentially is gonna get hung on it. So what I'm gonna do, and look at these cute little poles. So those are what we're gonna put on, but I need to find, I know that I have a stud here because of this edge, and I hate stud finders. I can't find mine, I didn't wanna buy another one. I found this thing, this is kinda cool. It's just a magnet, so you could probably do the same thing with a magnet. Obviously I know this corner has a beam on it, like a board on it, because you're gonna have a stud in the corner. But then we're trying to find, I know in this span, I should have another stud. Now, my building code, this is an old house, so I'm hoping it was built with 16 inches on center, meaning every 16 inches you should have a stud. In my city, you are actually allowed, there's a builder that builds 24 inches on center because it's a little bit more expensive or less expensive. I don't love it. So, but if you're having a hard time finding a stud, depending on what your building ordinance allows in your area, they might be building 24 inches on center, and in that case, I probably wouldn't have another stud in here. So, but this should be 16 inches on center. This is an old build. So I just move this magnet across because what the magnet is gonna do is it's gonna find a nail or a screw that's holding the, see? It just caught. So right there, the drywall is screwed into the stud. So I know I have a stud approximately in there somewhere. And so what I wanted to do is I want to make my marks on my board before I make my layout of my poles, because say I space my poles where one went exactly there, well, I could do my screw higher or lower, but I just don't want to put my screw into the wall and have it where I want my screw into my pole to go. So I wanted to get my placement before I start finishing this. So we're gonna go ahead and just draw a laser or get your level, but I'm sure that's probably close enough right there. So I have done little marks on the bottom that I can erase easily. So I know that's where I'm gonna go into my wall. Then I'm gonna figure out my placement. Does it make sense with where theirs are gonna go for me to do like 4 of these? I only have 4 or 3, and I can lay that out. So I'm gonna go get that together before I mount this on the wall. So first things first, let's just go ahead and get this mounted at the height that we want it. I'm gonna go higher than like a hook may normally go because we have a bench down here. So, I mean, you don't want stuff to always be hanging on your head depending on what, if you sit here and have a long coat, it's gonna be behind you. Say you had some hats or mittens or whatever. I don't want it like hanging down super low onto the bench. So I'm going a little bit higher. So we're gonna go ahead and start here and then we'll level it out before we attach to that side. Pardon me. The other thing you can do is if you're having a hard time getting these started, is you could start this on the ground so you have the downward pressure. Here, you could start this though before you're up on the wall. Just makes it a little bit easier, so that's an option. And I could do that with my end one too, so at least it's held into the wood before I hold it up on the wall. Oh, that's a bad screw. That head stripped. Hold on just a second. I really like star-tipped screws because they grab better and they don't strip out as much, but every once in a while from the factory, I get one that just doesn't, it didn't get formed all the way, which no biggie for a better product. We're in line there. And then we're gonna use a little level. And we're gonna get this guy in. Countersink those so that we can fill in we're still level. Okay, all right, so I used little yellow screws for decking, so they kind of blend in okay, but if you wanna cover them up with wood filler, you can, and then just let that dry and sand it. It just hides it a little bit more. I feel like with wood filler, we try to get it too perfect and then we take too much out. So just get it covered, let it dry, and then you can sand it. Don't try to remove it and get it flush, or you're gonna over remove it. So have our little holes filled, and that's ugly. We'll clean that up and sand it later. And it will seriously take us like 2 seconds when we come back to it. All right, so now, we have, and your poles are gonna be different. I'll put a link if you guys like these or wanna use them, but just like a really simple, nice brass pole. I think they have these in black too. So we're gonna take the pointed end, we're gonna screw that into the holes we pre-drilled, and then we're gonna twist this end on after. So yeah, that's all we're doing here. And if you're having a hard time getting that in there, one thing you can do is, let me show you a trick. Take the pointed end that you wanna go in. Now you wanna be careful because you don't wanna mess up your threads, so you're not gonna do too tight. You're gonna tighten that in your drill, and then you're gonna righty-tighty, we're gonna get it into the wall first. And we're just watching the depth. Okay. And then we just release. So you have a really easy way to get these in if they're not twisting in as easily as you would like. That's it, we're finished. Isn't it cool how we have this area behind a door, which is always a forgotten space? This was 30 inches wide, that's it. This hook is 22 inches across. I have 30 inches of space that would have otherwise been forgotten in this home that doesn't have a lot of square footage. So we were able to add a little bit of hook space, a little bit of storage room under this bench, a place where you can sit down and take off your shoes by paying attention to those kind of lost and forgotten spaces in a property. So look around for those places in your home that you can either get some storage and recuperate some space, or just make them special and they just add a little bit of zhuzh to your space. Like, there's so many cool things you can do. And if this isn't your style, you can do shiplap, you can do paneling. There's anything you can do. It doesn't have to be this style, but find those lost spaces in your home and make them make sense.